Lisa had always dreamed of owning a place where she could escape the noise and stress of city life. After years of saving every penny and working overtime at her accounting job, she finally had enough money to make that dream come true. The suburban neighborhood where she lived was nice enough, but the constant traffic honking horns and her neighbors' loud music made it hard to relax. The homeowners association in her neighborhood didn't help matters either. They seemed to have rules for everything. The grass had to be exactly the right height. Holiday decorations could only stay up for specific dates. Even the color of her front door had to be approved by a committee. Lisa followed all the rules, but she often wondered what it would be like to live somewhere without someone watching her every move. That's when she found the listing online: 40 acres of beautiful land, 3 hours away from the city. The photos showed rolling hills, old oak trees, and a small farmhouse that needed some work but had good bones. The best part was the price. It was actually cheaper than what she'd paid for her small city house 5 years earlier. Lisa drove out to see the property on a Saturday morning. The moment she turned off the main highway onto the gravel road leading to the ranch, she felt her shoulders relax. There were no other houses in sight. No traffic lights, no sirens, just wide open spaces and the sound of birds chirping. The farmhouse sat on a small hill overlooking a creek that ran through the property. It was old, probably built in the 1950s, but it was solid. The previous owners had taken good care of the foundation and roof. Inside, the rooms were small but cozy. The kitchen needed updating, and the bathrooms were definitely from another era, but Lisa could see the potential. She spent 2 hours walking around the property with the real estate agent. There was a small barn that could be fixed up, a chicken coop that just needed some new wire, and plenty of space for a garden. The agent mentioned that the nearest neighbor was almost a mile away, which sounded perfect to Lisa. "What about utilities?" Lisa asked as they walked back toward the house. "Well, there's a good well for water, and the septic system was updated 10 years ago," the agent explained. "Power lines run right up to the house, and believe it or not, there's decent internet service out here now. The phone company ran fiber optic cables through this area last year." Lisa could hardly believe it, a place this peaceful and private, but still with modern conveniences. She made an offer that same day. The buying process took about 6 weeks, which gave Lisa plenty of time to plan. She started researching how to renovate old farmhouses and made lists of everything she wanted to do: new kitchen cabinets, updated bathrooms, fresh paint throughout, and maybe a deck overlooking the creek. She also did her homework on local regulations. The property was in the county, not in any city limits. There was no homeowners association, no architectural review board, no committee to approve her fence color or landscaping choices. For the first time in years, Lisa felt truly free to make her own decisions about her property. The closing went smoothly, and Lisa got the keys on a Friday afternoon. She had already arranged to take the following week off work, so she could start making the place her own. That first weekend, she just walked around the property, planning and dreaming. The renovation work started slowly. Lisa could only make the 3-hour drive to the ranch on weekends, so progress was gradual. She hired local contractors for the big jobs like plumbing and electrical work, but she did a lot of the painting and decorating herself. There was something satisfying about working with her hands after spending all week staring at computer screens and spreadsheets. The kitchen renovation took almost 3 months. Lisa chose simple white cabinets and butcher block countertops that gave the room a clean, farmhouse feel. She kept the original hardwood floors throughout the house but had them refinished to bring back their natural beauty. The bathrooms were next. Lisa replaced the pink fixtures from the 1960s with modern white ones, but she kept the vintage tile patterns that gave the rooms character. She added new lighting and mirrors that made the small spaces feel bigger and brighter. By spring, the inside of the house was finished, and Lisa turned her attention to the outside. She planted a vegetable garden near the kitchen and put in flower beds around the front porch. The old barn got a fresh coat of red paint, and she fixed the chicken coop even though she wasn't quite ready for chickens yet. Lisa started spending more and more time at the ranch. At first it was just weekends. Then she began taking Friday afternoons off so she could drive out early and have longer weekends. Eventually she was working from home 2 days a week and spending those days at the ranch, connected to her office through the surprisingly good internet connection. Her city friends thought she was crazy at first. "Aren't you bored out there?" they would ask. "What do you do for entertainment?" But Lisa had never been happier. She loved waking up to the sound of birds instead of traffic, She enjoyed having her morning coffee on the porch while watching deer graze in the distance. In the evenings, she could see more stars than she had ever noticed in the city. Lisa started posting photos of the ranch on social media. Pictures of her garden, the sunset over the hills, her morning coffee set up on the porch. Her friends and coworkers seemed to enjoy seeing her transformation from stressed city dweller to relaxed country life enthusiast. The ranch became her sanctuary. When work got stressful, she knew she had a place to escape to where nobody could bother her. No neighbors complaining about her dog barking. No homeowners association sending letters about her grass height. No traffic, no noise, no drama. For the first time in years, Lisa felt like she could breathe. She had found her perfect place, far from all the rules and regulations that had controlled her life in the city. Little did she know that someone from her old neighborhood had been watching her social media posts very carefully. And that person was not happy about Lisa's newfound freedom. The peaceful life Lisa had worked so hard to create was about to be challenged by someone who believed that rules should follow you wherever you go, even to places where those rules had no legal right to exist. Lisa was in her garden pulling weeds on a beautiful Saturday morning when she heard a car coming up the gravel driveway. This was unusual because she rarely had visitors at the ranch and she wasn't expecting anyone. She stood up, brushing the dirt off her knees, and walked toward the front of the house to see who it could be. A black SUV was making its way slowly up the drive, kicking up dust as it approached. Lisa didn't recognize the vehicle, but as it got closer, her heart sank. Behind the wheel was Patricia Hendricks, the president of her neighborhood homeowners association back in the city. Patricia was a woman in her early 60s who took her HOA duties very seriously. Too seriously, in Lisa's opinion. She was the type of person who measured grass heights with a ruler and drove through the neighborhood looking for violations. Lisa had always tried to stay on Patricia's good side by following all the rules, but she had never particularly liked the woman. The SUV came to a stop in front of the farmhouse, and Patricia got out. She was wearing a business suit and high heels, which seemed completely out of place in the rural setting. She was carrying a clipboard and had that determined look on her face that Lisa knew meant trouble. "Good morning, Lisa," Patricia said in her overly formal voice. "I hope you don't mind me dropping by unannounced." Lisa definitely did mind, but she tried to be polite. "Hi, Patricia. This is quite a surprise. How did you even find this place?" "Oh, your social media posts have been very informative," Patricia replied with a tight smile. "You've been sharing quite a lot about your little retreat here. I thought it was time I came to see it for myself." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. She had been posting photos of the ranch, but she had never included the address or specific location details. Patricia must have done some serious detective work to track down the property. "Well, it's nice of you to visit," Lisa said carefully, "but I'm not sure why you felt the need to come all the way out here." Patricia straightened her shoulders and held up her clipboard. "I'm here in my official capacity as HOA president. I need to conduct an inspection of this property to ensure it meets our community standards." Lisa stared at her in disbelief. "Patricia, this property is 3 hours away from our neighborhood. It's not even in the same county. The HOA has no authority here." "I'm afraid you're mistaken," Patricia said firmly. "As a homeowner in our community, you're bound by our rules and regulations regardless of what other properties you may own. Section 12 of our bylaws clearly states that all properties owned by association members must comply with our standards." Lisa had read those bylaws many times, and she was pretty sure Patricia was making this up. But even if such a rule existed, which she doubted, it couldn't possibly be legally enforceable outside the neighborhood boundaries. "Patricia, I think there's been a misunderstanding," Lisa said, trying to keep her voice calm. "This ranch is completely outside the HOA's jurisdiction. You have no legal authority here." Patricia's expression hardened. "We'll see about that. Now, I need to inspect the exterior of the buildings, walk the property boundaries, and review any permits you may have obtained for renovations." "I'm not going to allow that," Lisa said firmly. "This is private property and you're not welcome here in any official capacity." "Excuse me?" Patricia's voice rose an octave. "Did you just refuse to cooperate with an official HOA inspection?" "Yes, I did," Lisa replied. "Because this isn't an official anything. You have no right to be here making demands." Patricia's face was turning red now. "Young lady, I'm the duly elected president of your homeowners association and I'm conducting legitimate business. Your refusal to cooperate will be noted in my report. Lisa almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. What report? To whom? Patricia, you need to leave now. I most certainly will not leave until I've completed my inspection, Patricia snapped. I drove 3 hours to get here and I'm not going back empty-handed. Yes, you are, Lisa said, her patience finally running out. You're trespassing on private property, and I'm asking you to leave immediately. Patricia looked genuinely shocked, as if no one had ever stood up to her before. In the neighborhood, people usually just grumbled privately about her heavy-handed tactics but rarely confronted her directly. This is completely unacceptable, Patricia sputtered. I have never been treated with such disrespect. I am an elected official. You're elected to oversee a small suburban neighborhood, not the entire state, Lisa replied. Your authority ends at the neighborhood boundaries, which are about 150 miles that way. She pointed in the direction of the city. Patricia was clutching her clipboard so tightly her knuckles were white. You are in violation of multiple association rules and your attitude is making things much worse for yourself. What rules could I possibly be violating? Lisa asked. The paint color on my barn? The height of my wildflowers? None of your rules apply here, Patricia. We'll see about that, Patricia said again, but her confidence seemed to be wavering. I'm going to have to report this entire incident to the board of directors. You do that, Lisa said. And while you're at it, maybe ask them to review the actual legal boundaries of the HOA's authority. Patricia stood there for a moment, apparently trying to figure out her next move. She looked around the property as if she was planning to start her inspection anyway, but Lisa stepped forward. Patricia, I'm serious. You need to leave right now. This conversation is over. This is far from over, Patricia said angrily. You can't just ignore your responsibilities to the community because you bought some land in the middle of nowhere. Watch me, Lisa replied. Patricia stomped back to her SUV, yanking the door open with unnecessary force. You're going to regret this, she called out as she got in. There will be consequences for your actions today. Have a safe drive back, Lisa said calmly. Though her heart was pounding, Patricia slammed the car door and backed up aggressively, spraying gravel as she turned around. Lisa watched the black SUV disappear down the driveway, leaving a cloud of dust hanging in the air. As the sound of the engine faded away, Lisa realized her hands were shaking. She had never confronted Patricia so directly before, and she wasn't sure what to expect next. She knew Patricia well enough to realize that this wasn't going to be the end of it. The woman was used to getting her way, and she didn't handle defiance well. Lisa went back to her garden, but she couldn't concentrate on weeding anymore. Patricia's visit had shattered the peaceful morning and left her feeling unsettled. She kept looking toward the driveway, half expecting the black SUV to return. Later that afternoon, Lisa did some research on HOA authority and property rights. Everything she found confirmed what she already knew. Homeowners associations had no legal jurisdiction outside their designated boundaries. Patricia's demands were completely baseless, but knowing she was legally right didn't make Lisa feel much better. She had seen how vindictive Patricia could be with people who crossed her. The woman had once spent 6 months harassing a neighbor over a mailbox that was painted the wrong shade of black. Lisa had a feeling that her peaceful ranch life was about to become much more complicated. Lisa thought Patricia's unexpected visit to the ranch was just a one-time thing, maybe the result of a particularly bad day or too much coffee. She was wrong. What followed over the next several weeks was a campaign of harassment that seemed to escalate with each passing day. It started with the letters. The first one arrived 3 days after Patricia's visit, sent by certified mail to Lisa's city address. The envelope had the official HOA letterhead, and inside was a formal notice of violations. According to Patricia, Lisa was in breach of several association rules, including failure to maintain property standards and non-compliance with inspection procedures. Lisa read the letter twice, hardly believing what she was seeing. Patricia had listed violations for things that didn't even exist at the ranch. She claimed Lisa had unauthorized structures, improper landscaping, and vehicles parked in violation of community standards. None of it made sense since Patricia had never actually inspected the property. The second letter came 4 days later, also certified mail. This one threatened fines of $500 per violation if Lisa didn't remedy the problems within 10 days. Again, the violations were completely made up, but the letterhead made them look official and intimidating. By the end of the second week, Lisa was getting certified letters almost daily. Patricia seemed to have an endless imagination when it came to finding new violations. She complained about the color of the barn, the height of the grass, the placement of Lisa's garden, and even the fact that Lisa was operating an unauthorized retreat center. Lisa tried calling Patricia to reason with her, but the HOA president refused to take her calls. When Lisa finally reached her, Patricia simply repeated that all violations must be corrected immediately, and that Lisa's failure to cooperate was making the situation worse. "Patricia, you've never even seen most of these things you're complaining about," Lisa said during one frustrating phone call. "How can you cite me for violations you haven't witnessed?" "I have my sources," Patricia replied smugly, "and photographic evidence." This confused Lisa until she realized what had happened. Patricia had been studying Lisa's social media posts like a detective examining evidence. Every photo Lisa had shared of her garden, her renovated kitchen, or her morning coffee on the porch was being used against her. Patricia was treating innocent pictures of ranch life as proof of HOA violations. Lisa immediately made her social media accounts private, but the damage was already done. Patricia had apparently saved screenshots of everything and was using them to justify an endless stream of violation notices. But the letters were just the beginning. Patricia's harassment campaign expanded to include other tactics that became increasingly intrusive and bizarre. She started calling the county offices, filing complaints about supposed code violations at the ranch. Lisa began getting visits from county inspectors who had to waste their time checking out Patricia's false reports. The building inspector came out to investigate claims of unauthorized construction. The health department inspector had to verify that Lisa's septic system was functioning properly. The fire marshal showed up to check on reports of improper burn piles. Each inspector was professional and apologetic when they realized the complaints were baseless. But Lisa found the constant interruptions exhausting and embarrassing. She had to take time off work to meet with inspectors and provide documentation that everything on her property was perfectly legal and up to code. "This is the third false complaint we've gotten about your property this month," the building inspector told Lisa. "During his second visit, someone's really got it out for you. You might want to consider filing a harassment complaint of your own." Patricia also began recruiting Lisa's neighbors back in the city to spy on her. She sent letters to everyone in the neighborhood, asking them to report any suspicious activity at Lisa's city house and to keep track of how often she was away. She claimed this was necessary for community security purposes. Most of Lisa's neighbors ignored these requests, but a few seemed to enjoy the drama. Lisa started getting calls from Patricia about things like her trash can being left out too long or her newspaper piling up when she was at the ranch for extended weekends. The most disturbing escalation came when Patricia started showing up at the ranch with other HOA board members. The first time she brought Tom Weatherby, the association's treasurer. The second time she brought both Tom and Janet Mills, the secretary. Each visit followed the same pattern. They would arrive unannounced, demand to inspect the property, and become increasingly aggressive when Lisa refused to let them onto her land. Patricia seemed to think that bringing witnesses would somehow give her demands more authority. "This is private property," Lisa explained to the group during their second visit. "You have no legal right to be here, and I'm asking you to leave." "We're conducting official HOA business," Patricia insisted, waving a folder full of papers. "Your continued refusal to cooperate is grounds for additional fines and potential legal action." "What legal action?" Lisa asked. "You have no jurisdiction here. Sue me in what court? For what crime?" But Patricia just repeated her demands and threats as if saying them often enough would make them true. Lisa began to dread weekends at the ranch. What had once been her peaceful escape was becoming a source of constant stress. She found herself watching the driveway nervously, wondering when Patricia's next surprise visit would come. The situation reached a new low when Patricia started posting in local Facebook groups, warning people about what she called Lisa's illegal operations at the ranch. She claimed Lisa was running an unlicensed business, hosting unauthorized events, and violating numerous safety regulations. Lisa had to create her own Facebook account just to respond to these false accusations. She posted copies of her property deed, building permits, and county inspection reports to prove that everything she was doing was completely legal. But Patricia seemed to have more time and energy for online drama than Lisa did. The worst part was how the harassment was affecting Lisa's enjoyment of the property she had worked so hard to buy and renovate. She couldn't relax and enjoy her garden because she was constantly worried about Patricia taking photos from the road. She couldn't have friends visit because she was embarrassed about the possibility of Patricia showing up and causing a scene. Lisa tried to ignore the harassment, hoping Patricia would eventually get bored and move on to torment someone else. But as the weeks passed, it became clear that Patricia was just getting started. She seemed to view Lisa's ranch as a personal challenge to her authority, and she wasn't going to give up easily. Lisa started researching her legal options. She learned about restraining orders and cease and desist letters. She looked into harassment laws and trespassing regulations. She even considered selling the ranch and finding somewhere else to escape to, though the thought of letting Patricia win made her angry. What Lisa didn't know was that Patricia was planning something that would force the situation to a dramatic climax. The HOA president had decided that if Lisa wouldn't respect her authority voluntarily, then outside enforcement would have to get involved. Patricia was about to make a phone call that would bring the full weight of law enforcement to Lisa's peaceful ranch, based on accusations that were not just false, but potentially dangerous to both women's futures. Lisa was having one of her better days at the ranch, trying to forget about Patricia's harassment campaign and focus on the simple pleasure of working in her garden. The tomatoes were finally ripening, and she was picking the first batch of the season when she heard the unmistakable sound of vehicles coming up her gravel driveway. But this time it wasn't just one car. It sounded like multiple vehicles, and they were moving fast. Lisa walked around to the front of the house and felt her stomach drop. 2 sheriff's department patrol cars were racing up the drive, their light bars flashing but sirens off. Right behind them was Patricia's black SUV. The patrol cars came to a stop in front of the farmhouse, and 2 deputies got out quickly. They both had their hands near their weapons and were scanning the property, as if they expected to find something dangerous. Lisa's mind raced, trying to figure out what could possibly have brought law enforcement to her peaceful ranch. "Ma'am, please step away from the house with your hands visible," one of the deputies called out. Lisa's heart was pounding, but she complied, raising her hands and walking slowly toward the officers. "What's going on? Why are you here?" "We received a call about suspicious activity at this location," the first deputy explained, relaxing slightly when he saw that Lisa was clearly not a threat. "Are you the property owner?" "Yes, this is my ranch. I'm Lisa Chen. What kind of suspicious activity?" Behind the patrol cars, Patricia was getting out of her SUV. She was wearing another business suit and carrying her ever-present clipboard. She had a satisfied expression on her face that made Lisa's blood boil. The second deputy was already walking around the property, looking for whatever Patricia had reported. The first deputy, whose name tag read Rodriguez, pulled out a small notebook. "We got a 911 call about an hour ago," he explained. The caller reported that this property was being used for illegal drug operations and that the owner had threatened violence against anyone who tried to investigate. Lisa's mouth fell open. "Drug operations, violence. That's completely insane. I grow tomatoes and paint furniture out here." Deputy Rodriguez looked around at the neat garden, the freshly painted barn, and the peaceful rural setting. His expression suggested he was starting to have doubts about the accuracy of the 911 call. "Ma'am, do you mind if we take a look around?" he asked, "just to verify that everything's okay here?" "Of course," Lisa said. "Look anywhere you want. I have nothing to hide." Patricia had walked over and was now standing behind the deputies, apparently waiting for them to discover whatever crime she had imagined. "Officers," Patricia said in her most official voice, "I'm Patricia Hendricks, president of this Women's Homeowners Association. I've been trying to investigate serious violations at this property for weeks, but she's been extremely uncooperative and hostile." Deputy Rodriguez looked confused. "Homeowners Association? Ma'am, this property is way outside any city limits. Are you sure you have jurisdiction here?" Patricia's confidence wavered for just a moment. "Well, our authority extends to all properties owned by association members, regardless of location." "I don't think that's how HOAs work," Rodriguez said diplomatically. "But let's focus on the immediate issue. What exactly did you see that made you call 911? "I've observed suspicious vehicles coming and going at all hours," Patricia said, reading from her clipboard. "Multiple people living on the property without permits. unusual chemical smells, and when I tried to conduct a welfare check, the owner became belligerent and threatened me. Lisa couldn't stay quiet any longer. Officer, she's lying about all of that. She's been harassing me for months because I wouldn't let her inspect my private property. This is a false police report. The second deputy had finished his walk-around and returned to the group. I don't see anything suspicious, he reported. Looks like a normal rural property. Garden, small barn, everything's well maintained. Did you check inside the buildings? Patricia demanded. There could be drug labs or weapons storage. Ma'am, Rodriguez said patiently, we can't search buildings without probable cause or a warrant. And frankly, nothing here looks like it warrants that level of investigation. Patricia's face was getting red. This was clearly not going the way she had planned. But I'm telling you, there's illegal activity happening here. I have photographic evidence. What kind of photographic evidence? Rodriguez asked. Patricia fumbled through her papers and pulled out several printed photos. They were screenshots from Lisa's old social media posts, showing her garden, her renovated kitchen, and a picture of her morning coffee on the porch. Rodriguez looked at the photos, then at Patricia, then back at the photos. Ma'am, these look like normal pictures of someone's home. I'm not seeing any evidence of illegal activity. But look at this one, Patricia insisted, pointing to a photo of Lisa's vegetable garden. Those could be marijuana plants disguised as tomatoes. Both deputies exchanged a look that clearly said they thought Patricia might not be entirely rational. Those are definitely tomato plants, the second deputy said. I grow them myself. Lisa felt a surge of relief, but also growing anger at Patricia's increasingly desperate accusations. Officer, Lisa said, this woman has been stalking and harassing me for months. She's filed dozens of false complaints with the county. She's been showing up at my property uninvited and demanding to search it. And now she's filed a false police report. Isn't that illegal? Rodriguez was making notes in his pad. Ma'am, he said to Patricia, filing false police reports is indeed a serious offense. Can you explain to me specifically what illegal activity you witnessed with your own eyes? Patricia stammered for a moment. Well, I didn't actually see any drug activity directly, but all the signs are there. The isolation, the privacy fencing, the refusal to allow inspections. None of those things are illegal, Rodriguez pointed out. People have a right to privacy on their own property. But she threatened me, Patricia insisted. She said she would call the police if I didn't leave. That's not a threat, Rodriguez said. That's someone asking you to leave their private property, which you're required to do if the owner asks you to. The situation was rapidly deteriorating for Patricia. Her grand plan to use law enforcement to validate her authority was backfiring spectacularly. I want to file a complaint, Patricia said desperately. This woman is violating multiple HOA regulations and interfering with official business. Ma'am, I'm going to be honest with you, Rodriguez said. From what I can see here, you don't have any legal authority on this property. And calling 911 to report drug activity when you haven't actually seen any drug activity is a misuse of emergency services. Patricia looked stunned. Are you taking her side? I'm not taking anyone's side, Rodriguez replied. I'm just telling you what the law says. This is private property. You don't appear to have any legal standing to be here, and the property owner has the right to ask you to leave. Lisa decided to push her advantage. Officer, I want to file a complaint against her for harassment and filing a false police report. Now wait just a minute, Patricia sputtered. I'm a respected community leader. I've never broken a law in my life. Ma'am, Rodriguez said, I'm going to strongly suggest that you stop coming to this property. The owner has made it clear you're not welcome here, and continued visits could result in stalking or trespassing charges. Patricia stood there with her mouth open, apparently unable to process that law enforcement wasn't supporting her position. This is outrageous, she finally managed. I'm going to report all of you to your supervisors. That's your right, Rodriguez said calmly. But I'm also going to include in my report that this appears to be a case of neighbor harassment rather than any actual criminal activity. As the deputies prepared to leave, Patricia made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. You're all going to regret this, she called out. I have connections. I know people. This isn't over. Rodriguez stopped and turned back to her. Ma'am, that sounds like a threat. I suggest you calm down and go home. Finally, Patricia seemed to realize that she had lost this battle completely. She stomped back to her SUV and slammed the door so hard that Lisa was surprised the windows didn't break. As Patricia's vehicle disappeared, down the driveway in a cloud of dust and the patrol cars followed at a more sedate pace, Lisa stood in her yard feeling a mixture of relief and anger. The police had validated what she already knew. Patricia had no authority at the ranch and was essentially stalking her. But the fact that the harassment had escalated to false 911 calls was deeply troubling. Lisa realized that this confrontation had probably pushed Patricia over some kind of edge. The woman's behavior was becoming increasingly erratic and potentially dangerous. It was time to take serious legal action before the situation got even worse. The false police report was the final straw for Lisa. She had tried to be patient and reasonable with Patricia, hoping the harassment would eventually stop on its own. But Patricia's willingness to waste emergency resources and make dangerous false accusations convinced Lisa that legal action was the only way to protect herself. The Monday morning, after the police incident, Lisa called in sick to work and spent the day researching attorneys. She needed someone who specialized in property law and harassment cases. After making several phone calls, she found Rebecca Torres, a lawyer who had experience with both HOA disputes and stalking cases. Lisa met with Rebecca that afternoon and explained the entire situation. From Patricia's first uninvited visit to the false 911 call, she brought copies of all the violation letters, photographs of Patricia's vehicles on her property, and screenshots of the defamatory Facebook posts. Rebecca listened carefully and took detailed notes. When Lisa finished her story, the attorney sat back and shook her head. "I've seen some pretty aggressive HOA presidents in my time," Rebecca said, "but this is beyond anything I've encountered. This woman has clearly lost all sense of boundaries and legal reality." "So you think I have a case?" Lisa asked. "Oh, you definitely have a case," Rebecca replied. "Multiple cases, actually. We can pursue a restraining order for stalking and harassment. We can file a cease and desist letter regarding the HOA's baseless claims of authority, and we can potentially pursue damages for defamation based on her false public statements about your property." Rebecca explained that the first step would be filing for a temporary restraining order. This would legally prohibit Patricia from coming to the ranch, contacting Lisa, or making any more public statements about her. "The good news is that you have excellent documentation," Rebecca said, flipping through Lisa's folder of evidence. "Most harassment cases are he said, she said situations, but you have written letters, witness statements from the deputies, and even photographic evidence of her trespassing." They filed the restraining order petition that week. The court date was set for the following Friday, which meant Patricia would have to appear in court to defend her actions. In the meantime, Rebecca sent a formal cease and desist letter to both Patricia personally and to the HOA Board of Directors. The letter clearly explained that the association had no legal authority over Lisa's ranch property, and that any further harassment would result in additional legal action. The response from the HOA board was swift and surprising. Instead of supporting Patricia, they seemed horrified to learn what she had been doing in the association's name. The board president, a reasonable man named David Kim, called Rebecca directly. "We had no idea Patricia was doing any of this," David explained. "She told us she was investigating some minor compliance issues, but she never mentioned anything about driving 3 hours to harass someone or filing false police reports." It turned out that several other residents had been complaining about Patricia's increasingly aggressive behavior within the neighborhood as well. The board had been considering removing her from office even before Lisa's situation came to light. The court hearing was scheduled for 10 in the morning on Friday. Lisa arrived early with Rebecca, feeling nervous but determined. Patricia showed up just before the hearing started, accompanied by a lawyer who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. Judge Martinez reviewed the evidence quickly and efficiently. He read through Patricia's violation letters, examined the photos Lisa had taken of Patricia's vehicles on her property, and studied the police report from the false 911 call. "Ms. Hendricks," the judge said, "can you explain to me what legal authority you believe gives you the right to inspect property that's located outside your HOA's boundaries?" Patricia's lawyer whispered something to her, but she ignored him and stood up. "Your Honor, as HOA president, I have a responsibility to ensure that all association members comply with our community standards, regardless of where their properties are located." Judge Martinez looked at her over his reading glasses. And where did you get that understanding of HOA law? Well, it's just common sense, Patricia replied. If someone is part of our community, all their properties should meet our standards. I see, the judge said dryly. And the 911 call reporting drug activity? Patricia's confidence wavered. I was concerned about suspicious behavior and thought law enforcement should investigate. But you didn't actually witness any drug activity, correct? Well, no, but all the signs were there. Ms. Hendricks, Judge Martinez interrupted, filing false police reports is a serious crime. Making baseless accusations about drug activity wastes emergency resources and could have put both you and Ms. Chen in danger. The judge spent several more minutes reviewing the evidence and asking questions. Patricia's answers became increasingly desperate and illogical. Her lawyer eventually stopped trying to coach her and just sat quietly, looking embarrassed. Based on the evidence presented, Judge Martinez finally announced, I'm granting the temporary restraining order. Ms. Hendricks, you are prohibited from contacting Ms. Chen in any way, from going to her ranch property, and from making any public statements about her or her property. This order will remain in effect for 1 year, and any violation will result in immediate arrest. Patricia looked stunned. But, Your Honor, she's violating HOA rules. Ms. Hendricks, the judge said firmly, your HOA has no authority outside its designated boundaries. None whatsoever. If you continue to believe otherwise, I suggest you consult with an attorney who can explain property law to you. As they left the courthouse, Patricia's lawyer pulled her aside for what appeared to be a very serious conversation. Lisa couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see that Patricia was becoming increasingly agitated as her attorney spoke. The restraining order made an immediate difference in Lisa's life. For the first time in months, she could go to the ranch without constantly looking over her shoulder. She could work in her garden without worrying about Patricia taking surveillance photos from the road. But the real resolution came a few weeks later when David Kim called Lisa personally to apologize on behalf of the HOA board. We've removed Patricia from her position as president, he explained. Actually, she resigned after her lawyer explained how much legal trouble she was in. The board voted unanimously to formally apologize to you and to clarify that the association has no claim to authority over your ranch property. David also mentioned that several other residents had come forward with their own stories of Patricia's harassment and abuse of power. Apparently, Lisa wasn't the only one who had been suffering under Patricia's increasingly dictatorial management style. The HOA board hired a new management company to handle day-to-day operations and implemented new policies to prevent future abuses of authority. They also agreed to pay Lisa's legal fees as part of a settlement agreement. Rebecca negotiated one additional element that Lisa particularly appreciated. Patricia had to post a public apology on the same Facebook groups where she had made her false accusations, clearly stating that all her claims about Lisa's ranch were baseless and that she had no legal authority to make them. Lisa framed a copy of that Facebook post and hung it in her ranch kitchen, not out of spite, but as a reminder of how important it was to stand up for herself when someone tried to overstep their boundaries. The ranch finally became the peaceful retreat Lisa had always wanted it to be. She started a small blog about country living that attracted readers who were dealing with their own HOA problems. Many of them found inspiration in her story about standing up to an abusive authority figure. Patricia, meanwhile, seemed to disappear from the neighborhood social scene entirely. Lisa heard through mutual acquaintances that she had moved to a different state, possibly to live with relatives. Whether she learned anything from the experience was unclear, but at least she was no longer making anyone else's life miserable. On quiet Sunday mornings, when Lisa sat on her porch with her coffee and watched the sunrise over the hills, she reflected on how the experience had changed her. She had always been someone who avoided conflict and tried to keep the peace. But sometimes she learned peace could only be achieved by fighting for it. The ranch was more than just her escape from city life now. It was proof that she could stand up for herself when it mattered most. And that knowledge made every sunrise even more beautiful than the last.